Hi, everyone, and welcome to Found Footage Fridays here on Voices from the Mausoleum. I'm Mike and Serial, and today we have a special Found Footage Friday episode for you. Today, we are talking with the filmmakers, the producers, and the screenwriters of Black Daruma, which can be found on Found TV. Hi, guys. How are you today?
Yeah, great.
Hi, Mike.
Thanks.
Yeah, great to be here.
Thanks
Yeah.
for having us.
So this is Toby and Fionn. You guys, like I said, are the directors, screenwriters, producers. You basically did everything in this movie except act, correct?
That's right, yeah.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to just do a brief synopsis of the movie Black Daruma, and then we can go ahead into this awesome interview with you guys. So on Letterboxd, it says, all filmed from the warped perspective of a doll, Black Daruma is a dark-humored psychological horror film about an unemployed man who buys a Japanese luck doll to improve his fortunes, only for his life to unravel in disturbing ways. And honestly, that is the best synopsis of a movie that I've heard because it really encaptured everything from start to finish about this movie. Because I feel like you guys hit the POV right away in this movie. The minute we open up, we are in the view of the doll. So we actually don't even know what's happening right off the bat until I believe his name was Ryan, right? The main character.
Yeah.
He goes ahead and he's looking for a hammer at an antique shop, which I do have a question about that as well. But he's then sees this doll, and then we have the conversation. The antique shopkeeper tells him the rules about this doll, that it's a Japanese luck doll. But yeah, so we see it from a point of view of the doll, and that goes throughout the entire movie. So the first thing I did want to ask, what gave you the inspiration to do a movie from the point of view of a doll?
That's an interesting question. I think that we've always loved doll horror and found footage, and we were thinking of, is there a way to do a doll horror movie in a way that no one's seen before? What would be an interesting angle on that? And I don't know how it came to us, but I guess we kind of joked to start with. What would it be like if we filmed the whole thing from the doll's perspective, even to the point where you don't see the doll at any point in the film? And I think we just ran with that. We thought that would be a really interesting creative challenge to stage the whole movie and to block the actors and do everything from the point of view of the doll. So yeah, I think it just came from conversations like that, didn't it?
Yeah, and I think that we watched The Boy, and that was really cool. And we were thinking, how can we do something that's not just the same? So you just see, a doll's in a room and then maybe it moves and, you're not sure what's happening. That's great fun, but it was like, how would we do something slightly different with this genre? And I think we got hold of a GoPro camera, and it kind of gives a slight fisheye distortion. And we started playing around with that. And then I think I came across that action movie, Hardcore Henry, with all the
Great
fight.
shot.
Yeah, and that was just completely bonkers watching that. I just thought it'd be so much fun to play around with this GoPro and have the doll's perspective. And we got a doll's head, actually. It's actually up there. I might just go and grab that. Let's go and grab that doll's head.
Yeah.
And we put it on the GoPro, and then had actors, improvising around that, and then we used the improvisations that they came up with.
Oh wow!
So we strapped the GoPro to this head, and we gave it to the actors when we were doing rehearsals, and just got them to play around with it. And we were filming different scenes with them and evolving the film. One of the interesting things about this film is we involved the actors quite early on. Yeah. The lead actor we'd cast already. And so out of the improvisations they were doing, that's where a lot of the dialogue came from, because we were planning to approach it a bit like, Paranormal Activity or something, where there wouldn't be a strict script. It was just going to be an outline, shoot it over, a week or so. But when we were doing the improvisations with the actors, they were brilliant improvisations, but they were going on a long time. And we thought, if we just have too much free rein here, I'm worried we're not going to be able to cut this film down to a reasonable length. But we did use a lot of the dialogue they came up with.
Nice. I do have to ask, because you just showed the doll head. So what were the first reactions from the actors when you gave them the doll head with the GoPro? Because I can only imagine, like, if I'm on this set and you're like, here, this is what you're working with. I'm looking at it like, have these guys lost their mind? What are we doing here? It worked so well, though.
Well, yeah, I mean, so what happened was we came up with a very crude thing like with this in the auditions. In the audition stage and development stage, and so they were working with something that looked like a doll and passing it around between them and stuff. But when it actually came to the filming, we had a cinematographer that we worked with on our previous feature film, and he came up with a much more complicated rig that was able to be put down and balanced and had a much better camera on, and so that looked a lot less like a doll. And so during the shoot, it was a very strange kind of camera rig that could be set down and handled by the actors. So they, in a sense, they had a harder job than during the rehearsals when they had something to look at, because they had to look down the camera lens and it didn't look so much like a doll. But it's amazing how the actors took to that. We were worried having a film that relied on actors mostly handling the camera themselves and moving it around. They're not trained camera operators, and they're not able to concentrate on their lines and performance as well as the camera work, of course. But they did an amazing job working with the camera, just taking our direction.
I think that the novelty element of that was a great selling point, and that made them, really want to get involved with this, because obviously it's not a high budget thing, and it's intentionally stripped back. We wanted to make a film that didn't rely on lavish cinematography, and like our first film was all about that beautiful cinematography and putting haze out in the old castle and creating this kind of interesting gothic vibe. But I think we wanted to do something that was more like a play. So even if we were shooting in quite a drab, mundane environment, it would be much more focused on the actors and the performance. And I think the actors that we got to work on it bought into that, and they just loved that idea of doing that. And it was so much fun for them. And I think that paid off, and that gave, there was a kind of really nice energy, a chemistry with the central characters, Ryan and Louise, in this kind of kitchen sink drama feeling, where you're not quite sure, is it paranormal, or is it just psychological? And that ambiguity that's kind of running through the film was really fun to play with. And we did the references of, like, we had the kind of paranormal activity bed at night, and everyone's like, kind of, is the door going to move or something like that? But of course it doesn't actually go that way, but it's just fun to reference other things you've done. And I think as a filmmaker, you're always kind of recycling things that have impacted you, and then trying to create something new. And I think the strive to just do something original and different is always with us to some degree, and we want to be known as guys who not quite sure what we're going to do next. And that's, we want to play that.
And I think you guys nailed that. We've talked on this show before. Found footage, typically, I mean, there's a lot of creativity out there, but when it comes to found footage, there's a good formula that has worked. And it's basically like the Blair Witch formula of not a lot happens. You do have to build a little bit of tension, but it's the last act that really brings in the movie. And then there's a lot of different movies that try to go away from that, because if you don't have the story to sell that long, nothing particularly exciting happens, but it's very story driven, you might lose your audience. But there's so many people that have strived to do something different. And I think you guys nailed the originality. I have not seen a movie like this. And I think the only movie that I can kind of think about that's similar to your movie, and it came out after, so you guys are, again, for me, the original idea here, but the movie Presence, that came from the point of view of a ghost, which I think is similar to this movie Black Daruma. But again, I think you guys, especially in found footage, you found something very unique, which is hard to do because there's so much found footage out there. And it starts to get a little repetitive. So to be able to find something, not only just a new concept, a style, you guys nailed that. And then I do want to bring it back to, you guys were talking about the actors and how they took to the mechanics of it all. And it came out so strong because obviously in found footage, you need to care about the characters. You need to really like the actors. And I know because found footage is very indie, it's very low budget. We've talked about this on the show as well, that sometimes the acting isn't always the strongest, but the story's really good. Sometimes the story's not like the strongest, but the acting's really good. There's always going to be a give and take, and people who love found footage are able to understand that something might be not as on par as the other part of the movie. But I think, again, conceptually, this movie is outstanding. I love the concept of this movie, but I really took to Ryan and Louise. And with the doll, like, the movements were so good when, like, she was throwing the doll into the bin, like the camera angles and the shaking, like, it did look like we are the doll, like we are in the doll's body, like everything was so great there. But yeah, kudos to the casting, because Ryan and Louise, I think they nailed everything that they were supposed to do, because like you said, this movie is very psychological horror. It's about, I just put it as like a down on his luck guy. He's unemployed. He had a bad situation with his last teaching job. He moved into his in-laws. He feels very like defeated. And then he just really grasps to this doll, and you just see his descent go very quickly, very smoothly. And I just, like you said, the casting, you had already cast him. The casting came pretty quickly, but I just want to talk a little bit more, like, how great was it to work with them? Because again, I think they nailed what was really good in this movie is the tension, because I think most of the world is not living in a one percenter place. Like, we are all working class, middle class, lower class, and to see that struggle of a real life, like real life feeling family going through financial struggles, a lot of people can relate to that, and it's bleak. So like, they really nailed that. So I just want to talk a little bit of like, how great was it to work with them and what they brought to your movie? Was it everything you thought it would be?
Yeah, I mean, Ryan, he was a guy who, Richard, who played Ryan, was a guy that our mum, who's an actress, had worked with him in quite a few shows, and we knew he was good, and she's become good friends with him, and she recommended him, and he'd been to one of our short film screenings quite a few years ago, and we looked at his show reel, we looked at some clips of things he'd done. We thought, man, he's a legit real actor. He's great. He can really do anything, like accents and very physical and all that. And he's a total pro, and we just clicked from the very beginning. And he said, I'm not really that into horror, but I'm interested in it. And then before we knew it, he was like, man, I just watched all the Conjuring films. I just watched like Insidious. I just watched like Blair Witch. And he was just like, this is great. It just kind of like started to really get into it. And that was, so we knew we were onto a good one with him. And then, sometime after that, we thought, well, maybe let's do a local audition, because one of the things we like to do is work with local actors if we can find them, rather than, do an online audition and bringing people up from London or somewhere. It's good to work with, because there's always people around often who are good at, who've got talent, who are undiscovered. And so we did some local auditions, and we had a reasonably good turnout. And actually from there, we were able to find pretty much all the other characters. And that was a great process. And we recorded the audition tapes, and then we used some of those improvisations to then feed that back into the script.
I think that is worth commenting on, actually, that Sheffield, where we live, is like, it's a post-industrial city, really. It's being redeveloped, slowly getting there, but it used to be the kind of the steel center of the world, really. But a lot of the buildings and feeling around the city is like, it's had its heyday. And so we were shooting the film in this environment, and we wanted it to feel like this is a bit of a depressed area. Nobody's doing that well. Everybody's living in these small, cramped, dark houses and that kind of thing. And so we tried to be quite grounded with our casting, and we actually cast Louise. Her real name is Louise too, and she has a really good, strong Sheffield accent, which was great. And we thought this lends a lot of authenticity, and we started to tweak some of the details of the film and think about what kind of parents would she have, what might her upbringing have been, and we really tried to build the film around some of the cast to make sure that it felt authentic. And because like you say, on a low budget, you don't necessarily have the privilege of being able to get whoever you want or have elaborate production design and change the world, create a different world. So you learn the art of working with what you've got, and so you building things around the cast, around the props, around the sets that you've got is really key.
Yeah, and I think you guys, the world building there was spot on to what you guys were saying right now. Is I've never been to the UK. I don't know the different areas and how they're different from other areas, but I feel like I did get to know where they were. I got to know who they were, what type of class they were, and then just seeing the stuff around it. I really felt like I knew the location, what type of people live here, and then Louise had a very strong English accent that I was not privy to, but I'm like, I really like the way she sounds. That was something that I caught the first time. I'm like, I was really enamored by her and her performance. I thought both of them, like I said, the progression in their characters were so great, but particularly to Louise because she started off so patient, and honestly, put her up for sainthood because the patience was strong. But you saw the patience, and then you saw that she's trying to work with him. She's trying to understand him and what he's going through, all whilst like saying, this is our situation. I get what you're going through, but how do we work with that and work with our to better our situation? Like, we're struggling here. And without, in the beginning, like, I love that she did not put the blame on him. She just let him know that because of the choices, this is our situation, but she never once blamed him. I loved their chemistry. I loved the connection between them, but then that really hit home when you started to see her get frustrated. Like, why are you playing with this doll? Because she didn't understand it. And then he's starting to lose his mind a little bit. And that's what I really loved, as well as you mentioned it earlier. Is this paranormal? Is this just psychological? Because even I already knew what happened, but the second time I watched this, I'm still trying to connect. I'm like, was he connected to the doll? Like, was there, I know this was very psychological, but was there a presence inside of him with the connection? Because as we see towards the end of the movie, but yeah, the psychological route that you guys took, just stemming from a situation that we can all relate to, like being stressed about financial situations. That's a horror in itself. So we talked about, like you said, the style of the point of view of the doll was kind of a random thing. Did you guys know what type of story you wanted ahead of time, or did this just all like kind of fall into place as you guys were coming up with stuff?
I think we were heavily influenced by lockdown. All around the world, everybody had their own experience of the lockdowns a few years ago. And I think that we felt like we'd spent a lot of time indoors in quite a limited world, struggling with, what is my value? Because as a filmmaker, we're working full-time as filmmakers. Suddenly we don't have, colleagues or networking meetings or ways of interacting with people, and you don't feel like you're a valued part of society anymore because you can't necessarily go out and shoot or whatever. And I think we felt like we had a lot to work out of our system about being, guys in our 30s who are struggling to know, what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to provide for a family and feel responsible? And that out of that, the Louise character comes out. It's almost like the shadow part of every man is this sense of you need to step up, you need to take responsibility, you need to look after yourself and provide and so on. But at the core, Ryan is that sort of playful character who's struggling to do that, and he really just wants to have an easy way out. You know, the doll is his easy way out of doing all of that. But we very much wanted it to feel like there is a possibility there's something supernatural with this doll, and that maybe he's onto something. So trying to create balance in the film, so it's not Louise is a horrible kind of person to live with, and she doesn't understand that he's just a struggling man, but try and give her some empathy, you know. So you're right, early on we tried to make it so that she is patient, she's understanding. We think, okay, you know, she's pretty good. He owes her a favor here.
Yeah. I think that it's something that we've noticed been cropping up in society for a long time is instant gratification, and I want everything and I want it now, and I don't want to put in the work for it. And I was thinking quite a lot about scratch cards, you know, and the lottery. And we'd already made a short film where, you know, somebody wins some money and then loses the scratch card, and it causes a meltdown in their relationship. I thought this is something a lot of people get, is that if only I could just line up these 3 symbols or something, and suddenly I've got all this money and it's gonna fix everything, rather than like the struggle of like learning a valuable skill or setting up a business. But people do it also with I don't know, ornaments and things, or superstition, that if I put this ornament in my house, it's gonna improve things. And a lot of people believe, you know, in those kind of things. And I think it was fun, the idea of Ryan just thinking, I've got this doll, and I can just put the responsibility on this doll, rather than having to work on myself and what that might do to him. And hopefully it was something people could relate to. But there was also a black comedy to it. It is ridiculous, you know. It's this guy. There's a line in it of, you know, I think it's another character in it, in the car. Was it?
Oh,
yeah, Darren, who says, you know, grown men playing with dolls, you know, kind of thing, and Donna throws it off like, you know, there's a moment of truth of what the hell's going on with this situation, and you're playing with, you know, grown men playing with dolls in this situation. So it's kind of, you know, it's kind of fun to see the absurdity of that, but also to somewhat be disturbed by it as well, and how that could happen to somebody. And obviously during lockdown, a lot of that kind of thing was happening, and we're losing the plot, and especially if you're in, you know, quite claustrophobic environments. I mean, I remember being in a house with a couple of small children who were very wound up, and at one point they kind of just started to beat me up and jump on me, and I ended up with a black eye. They were so worked up because they hadn't been out. You know, it's like if you cage wild animals, you know, it's it's not always going to go that well. So there's all that kind of stuff that came from what was going on in society just before we started writing. So it was all these things mixed together, you know.
And I think you guys implemented that very well, because the fact that you said that, it resonated with me very quickly. There's a particular scene that I don't know if everybody will feel the same way. And I'm sure that this had to have been intentional, because you guys are talking about the lockdown, feeling confined, all this stuff. There was a particular line and scene that just really affected me. And it was so small, but it was such a great detail, was when he's first talking to Louise, like we're seeing them towards the beginning, and they're in the living room. We do know that this isn't their space, but like when he goes to talk to her and he sits on the coffee table, and she tells him, "Don't sit on that. That's not ours." And that was just that hit me, because I'm like, when especially young couples in general, or people who just like have to rely on someone else for something, that level of feeling like things are not yours really hits, and you just feel uncomfortable, because it's like that adds to the stress of like, man, they really are down on their luck. Like they have to watch where you're supposed to feel most safe and comfortable in your own living space. You don't feel comfortable because it's not yours. And just that one quick line delivery really hit it home for me, how much in a struggle these two were in. And I just thought that was so well done.
That's great. You know, as a screenwriter, it's always great to hear that, because it's such a deliberate line, that we put in, you're just sewing in things that hopefully aren't too on the nose and not too obvious, but things that are suggesting these are people living in a space that's not fully theirs. They're renting, they're not that successful. And so I'm glad that had the punch that it needed to.
Yeah, because I just look at it, I'm like, I can't imagine not feeling at home in my own home. Like, that's just something that I feel no one should have to feel or go through, but it really drives it home, the struggle that they were in. And that's why, like, again, you feel for Louise because she's working, she's budgeting, like she talks about her budget a lot. So to the fact that they were budgeting a hammer, because he overspent on the hammer, which I don't know how much, was it 20 quid or 20 pound?
Yeah, 20 quid I think he spent. Yeah.
So I don't know how much that is, but I'm like, obviously she said that it can go for a $5. So I'm like, that's a lot less than what he spent. So like, they're budgeting down to what feels like the penny. So to see that he's not, in her point of view, not taking this seriously enough, like he's choosing to spend time with the doll. He wants to put the blame and the good parts on this doll. Like, if anything good happens, it's the doll. If anything bad happens, it's because she was unkind to the doll. There's no responsibility on his end. But you did also mention like the instant gratification, that's what you were going for. I felt that immediately because in the beginning, like, he didn't question that shopkeeper enough for my taste. Like, he was just like, oh, good luck, give it to me. And I'm just like, I feel like most people would be a little bit more skeptical. Like, I would be like, no, I don't believe in this. It would take a lot for the antique shopkeeper to sell me on this. But I think it's what you guys had kind of mentioned, and I think it does really show, like, he was looking for something instant in his life. He didn't want to go on these interviews. He didn't want to do this extra stuff. He was sold this instant gratification doll, like, you're gonna have good luck. This is all you have to do. And he's like, give it to me. And then as soon as he got home, he immediately jumped into it. And when she called it ugly, he's like, don't call it ugly. Like, he bought into this so fast that it made me, again, believe that, okay, he's in some dire straits here, because he, instead of trying to like focus on his upcoming interviews, he's like, I have a doll that's gonna fix everything. So it was a lot.
That's right. It's interestingly, a lot of the scenes that we filmed, where there was a lot more material that we filmed, and we had planned originally to shoot every scene in one shot, and so we wrote it that way, we staged it that way, and we made sure we got through the whole scene. It was only when we got to the edit and we lined up all that on a timeline, we're like, wow, this thing's coming out in like 2 hours. The scenes are running quite long, and some of them they weren't feeling tight enough, and so we took the decision, let's go for more of that traditional jump cut found footage aesthetic, and we'll just say that, it's like the doll is blinking, if you like, that we're moving forward in time like any kind of film does those jump cuts, but we'll cut out unnecessary beginning and ends of scenes and so on. So in that shopkeeper scene at the beginning, there's a lot more material of him kind of talking about how he's got a job interview coming up and he's stressed about it, and the shopkeeper's asking him. But we removed all of that because actually we realized you didn't need too much of that. You could just keep the thing moving along. So I'm glad that it's kind of, has that impact, because there's always that fear if you cut stuff, exposition out, particularly in the beginning, the first 20 minutes or so. It's like, are people going to follow what's going on, or they have the context, or they're going to get along with it?
Yeah.
I think it was I think that was a great cut, because like I said, it's one of those, like, it really sells his character a little bit more, that we didn't have that exposition of like, oh, he's going through all this. We find it out later, but like, that moment in the start of it all was like, wow, he's he's jumping into this luck doll. Like I feel that this man is very down on his luck, that he's jumping into this good luck charm. Do want to talk, because this movie is called Black Daruma. It's all about a Daruma doll. I know you guys were playing with the different ideas. How did you come about it being a Daruma doll?
That's a really strange situation, because we came up with the idea that there was something called a Japanese luck doll. But we had no idea they actually really existed until we were almost through a kind of, I think we'd probably done an outline of the film, or at least, and we were developing it. And then
in fact, I think that we had said there's a luck doll. We needed a luck doll for the film. And at some point we said, what country in the world does it feel intuitively like they would have something like a luck doll? And we said, oh, Japan. Surely Japan has something like that. And so we just called it Japanese luck doll. And you're right. And then at some point, I think we Googled Japanese luck doll to think, is there anything out there in the folklore? And then we realized there's this whole thing about these so-called Daruma dolls with this whole ritual around it and cultural traditions, and you can buy them. And we just thought,
but
that's crazy.
That actually, a lot of what happens with the Daruma ceremonies they have, the rituals, fit already what we were writing in the film. Involving fire and making a wish, and that was really weird.
That was very strange.
And I think that goes back to the when there's a coincidence or something in the creative process. And David Lynch would do a lot of this kind of thing with his work, and he's a big inspiration for us. You pay attention to that,
Oh, awesome!
Yeah. So that was like a little gift, along the way of, like they call a happy accident.
That just meant you were meant to make this movie.
When you feel you're tapping into something that's like like the zeitgeist that's out there, and it's strange, because at any given time when somebody thinks they're making a unique film, somebody else out there in the world is probably making something similar, and it's like the idea is getting to different people. So there's a race of, okay, who can get it out there first before it's no longer as original as you maybe.
But that's the fun part too, is like people may have a similar idea, but because everyone's so different, the same idea is going to be different from you guys as opposed to someone else who it's along the lines of the same idea, but you have a different viewpoint on how you want it executed.
That's right.
Which again, like point of view from the doll, point of view from a ghost with presence, they're so completely different, even though like stylistically there's a similarity, but the movies themselves are so different. You mentioned the fire rituals, and I do want to kind of get to that part, because that part of the movie, once we get to towards the end, the last act, specifically first when he starts off, a great part of this movie was the tension in the scene with his mother-in-law. When he flips the script and makes it look like Louise has the problem, I was so unnerved, because again, so this movie is a psychological horror film, and people need to understand horror does not necessarily mean jump scares and like something that's going to cause nightmares. It's about making you uncomfortable. It's about giving you some tension, some suspense, and you guys nailed it throughout the entire movie, because I was uncomfortable throughout the entire movie, because everything he was going through made me uncomfortable because it was too real. Like this was like too relatable that it made me uncomfortable. But in that scene where he turns the script, because we know Louise is fed up with him, Louise is just so stressed that he now turns her own mother against her. Chills went up my spine, because it was so subtle. Like it's not anything like, holy crap, like this is so scary, but it's just like there's two parts to it. He has lost complete control of his mind at this point. He is totally invested in this doll and himself. Like he's lost all sense of reality. But now to flip the script on his wife and basically tell his mother-in-law like she's got a problem, and set it up, because he knew her actions. He knew what she was gonna do. And so he beat her to the punch to make her look unstable. I just thought that was such a great scene, and it really made me uncomfortable because I just was like, I didn't know where it was going to go. I was scared that it was going to go even further, where like they were going to try and restrain her and do something with her. You guys had me at the edge of my seat with that.
That's great. Yeah, we've always loved, writing things that are a bit more subtle and restrained, and it was a lot of fun to write, but also to direct those scenes, because it's so much in the subtlety, like you say, that he's taking a moment while Louise is out of the room to just twist the narrative a little bit, and yet it flips the whole story on its head, and then the mother is going along with this, that Louise has got this obsession with the doll. I think it's fun for the actors to play as well, and in many ways I think that's where it starts to feel like a play, doesn't it? It's like nothing spectacular has really happened. There's not been a big set piece of action yet. They're just sitting on a sofa discussing something. And yet the world of the film just caves in on itself. And I love that kind of thing, because then it's all about how do the actors hold that moment in their performance. Yeah,
I can remember we were kind of on that scene, and we were like, how could we throw a spanner in the works here? How could we do something that people wouldn't see coming, and get everything out on the table? And we just thought, man, that would be really. It was like a breakthrough moment. We thought that would be really disturbing. Flips the whole narrative round. And I remember thinking that was a cool moment, and we thought, let's definitely get this in here, because it'll be unsettling. It'll be very, very unsettling to see that play out.
Yeah, because everything in this movie was so beautifully subtle, a subtle progression, because we do get his moments, his small fights with Louise. Then we get to that uncomfortable interview where I didn't know what that lady was gonna think when he busted out that doll. I was happy for him that he got the job, but then when we get to the elevator, I'm like, I knew something was gonna happen. Like, so there's all this little progression of like, it's getting more uncomfortable. He's starting to lose reality a little bit more, and we're going, and then we get to that subtle scene in the living room with his mother-in-law, and then you get that twist. Like, that was a nice little punch up in the movie where I'm like, all right, I could just tell that we're getting towards the end of the movie, because this like just really cranked it up a notch. Even though it was subtle, like this felt like this is where the movie's taking a turn, and it did. It got stressful, and we get to that fire ceremony. I got very nervous with that scene. That was also very uncomfortable to watch. But again, he did such a phenomenal job playing the part that he needed to play there, of like, I thought he was really gonna light himself on fire. I was so nervous. He just did such a good job. I think you guys really found a gem in both he and Louise. I think they nailed this movie. I can't praise them enough. So I hope if you guys do speak to them, let them know they did such a phenomenal job. But yeah, that ceremony was pretty unsettling. And you had said, so was this scene written before you knew about the actual fire ceremony?
As far as I can remember, it was.
I think so. Yeah, I think we had this idea about fire, even though, when we looked online, there's this whole ritual with Daruma dolls in Japan where people make their wish, they paint one eye of these blank-eyed dolls to represent their wish, and they keep them there for the year. And once the wish is achieved at the end of the year, then they paint the other eye and they burn them all in this ceremony. And we just thought, this is great. We're going to weave this into the dialogue at different times, and we wanted then, right, once we knew that's the backstory with the Japanese folklore, we started to then work back through the script and think, how can we help Ryan's journey start to mirror some of what this means? So there was a great synergy of stuff that we came up with, and then realizing a lot of it existed, and then just adding the details.
Yeah.
So another thing that I wanted to bring up, because this movie, phenomenal movie. I really enjoyed it. But so you guys, I've mentioned this already. So you directed, produced, and wrote it, and that's very common in the found footage indie world because again, you're not working with a large budget, so you got to wear a whole lot of hats. But particularly for the both of you, because you guys are brothers, how has been the dynamic working together in your films, doing everything? Does one person take a little bit lead on something else, or is it just a really good, easy collaborative effort?
It's sort of, I think it's kind of evolved over the years because I mean, we started making films when we were teenagers. And I would, at that point, I'm 3 years older than Toby, but when I was about, I guess maybe sort of 18, Toby was bringing school friends back who were acting in the film. He would act in the film, and I'd be telling them what to do and, directing them. And then eventually he started to develop more of an interest in doing camera and editing. And then we both got into the producing, and then Toby started to study more the writing. So, we overlap on a lot of different things. We do the story development together, but Toby actually does the writes the screenplay, and we both produce. But when it comes to directing, I think we found a technique when we were working on Playhouse, which is our first film, which we shot in 13 days in the far north of Scotland. I think it was kind of like Toby would do more of the blocking and the physical direction, and I would keep an eye on where characters were emotionally and the nuance of what was happening in the scene. And then I would talk to Toby about my thoughts, and then he would quickly put his thoughts towards that as well. And then he would then articulate that to the actors and go and talk to the actors. And then we've stuck that out quite a bit. And then sometimes we do shift those roles around a little bit. But we have a shorthand, as brothers, and where we even just like a look we can give each other, and we know exactly what we mean and whether we're on the same page or not. Or there's a kind of there's a shared almost like a history of different reference points that we have because we're into a lot of the same films. It'd be like, it's like that moment in such and such, and you're like, oh yeah, I totally get that. And that's amazing because when you're under the pressure of a shoot and you have hardly any time, trying to do a feature film, I think this one we did in 8 days. You don't have a lot of time to even discuss stuff. You've just got to make a decision, and having two of us working out together, so we see ourselves as basically one brain, two sides working together as one. It's fantastic. It's a real joy and a real gift to have Toby's my only brother, and the fact we both love this and do it together. That's a big part of it. I think we'd be trying to do this on our own, we wouldn't have got so far. Would be too much.
No, that's really awesome. And yeah, the movie itself was so cohesive. So I think you guys, again, did a brilliant job working together because I cannot praise your movie enough. I really enjoyed it. I woke up early just to watch it again today. So I saw it again, and there were so many things that I saw differently than the first time I saw it. But I mentioned to you guys earlier, because I found this movie on Found TV from a recommendation from one of the owners, Monica. She told me about this movie when I asked her, like, what's a good found footage film that you've seen recently? And she said, have you seen Black Daruma? I was like, I've never heard of this movie. And she let me know. She goes, it's going to be on our streaming app. You need to watch it. I'm so glad she let me know because, again, what I personally am always looking for, because so I'm new to Found Footage Fridays, but I'm not new to found footage. This has been my favorite genre for a very long time. There's so many great ones out there, and there are so many movies out there that are just not for me, but it's also like you run into the issue when you've watched so many, it starts to be a little repetitive. So what I look for is something that's out of the box. And this was completely out of the box, not just for found footage, but again, I think in horror, because there are plenty of doll movies out there. And I'm with you guys. I love doll horror. I love doll horror movies. Dolls is up there for me. Puppet Master. Yeah. But to take the doll horror genre and then say, what if we just do it from the doll's point of view? And again, we don't know if are we seeing it from the point of view of the doll that is sentient? Like, is this actually, are we like inside of like an Annabelle type situation? Or is this just the point of view of the doll and we're just watching someone slip into insanity? And I thought that was just so very well and cleverly done. So I do have to commend you guys on how you work together, because this movie was just so good from start to finish. And I do have to ask, you guys referenced that you have other films out there. Is it all horror, or do you guys play into other genres?
Yeah, we our first feature film called Playhouse came out in 2020, and that's the horror. But what's interesting, and we didn't necessarily plan this, it plays a similar line between, is this psychological or is it supernatural? And it kind of it plays a lot of the film on that note. And I think that's something that we're very much drawn to, the lines between those, because we like, plays, and we love giving actors room to perform and play with people's psychology, not necessarily just relying on jump scares and supernatural events. It's a good realm for us. But I think for now, horror's our main thing, and we have other ideas for different films in different genres. But I'm sure, as you know, and the audience will know, it's so hard to get funding and stuff for other kinds of genres. If you're going to make a successful comedy or a drama or something, to do that on a low budget and find an audience for it is really tricky. Whereas, say, with found footage, there's such a committed, passionate audience for that. And like you said earlier, they are very forgiving towards certain, production limitations you might have. Because I think they just accept, the fans kind of embrace and accept that this is a world where filmmakers are trying new things, taking risks. They're not going to have all the bells and whistles of other projects. And that's part of what's really interesting. And that for us is very freeing, because we have a lot of friends who are at a similar stage of having done 1 or 2 films, and they're just like, oh no, I'm trying to go for films now on a $1 million, $2 million budget, and that's all I'm going to do. But what we see happen is year after year, they're just not getting anywhere. They think it's funded, it's going to happen, then it falls through, and year after year, you're like, you could be making something here, even if it's done for $5,000 or whatever it is. Just do something. Keep creative, and found footage and horror more broadly enables us to keep moving whilst we have the other bigger budget projects in mind too.
And I think that I thought about this for some time, and actually the smartest films are probably the found footage movies. When you think of the big ones, like Blair Witch and Paranormal Activity, the fact that they held an audience, captivated an audience where there's so little actually really happens, and they didn't have like the Hollywood spectacle where you can just throw endless crane shots and explosions at everything, and yet pull in such a huge audience. That's incredibly smart. And the return on investment for anyone who put money in is extraordinary. So there's something really fun about working with these limitations and trying to carve out a story that keeps people hooked and under the suspense with the limitations of keeping everybody in a house or having a few actors. And I personally just love haunted house films. I just think that it's just a fabulous subgenre within horror, and I agree. I feel I just continually want to watch those films, and I often see old buildings around here in Sheffield. There's a lot of old buildings, and we have access to one for potential shooting of another film, and going into those buildings and picking up on what's there, like you can feel the history, you can feel the stories, you can feel sometimes even like supernatural things. And it's just the idea of creating stuff in those environments. And it could just be someone's home. That's just something I just want to continually go back to. And there's no other genre that's pulling me towards getting out of that. Like although we sometimes say it'll be fun to make a comedy, it's like actually it's not enough to actually go and do that. So we feel very rooted in continuing with the horror, especially a haunted house, supernatural, psychological. Like we're not so into the kind of grisly, gory stuff. That's not. There's some films like that I think are really, really great. I can recognize the talent, but generally, we like to conceal the monster to some degree.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I definitely think that I feel that every filmmaker should at least, whether it's something that needs to be released or not, they should attempt to make a found footage film just because it's a great creative process. Like you said, you're so limited that it's a way to test what you can do inside your own mind and what you can get on screen with such a limited budget. I think it's really free, like you said, freeing is a good word, because the audience is always going to be so forgiving. As long as you show that you didn't do this just to make a quick buck, like if you put your mind and passion into this project, we forgive so much. If it's creative, we're gonna rock with you. We love this genre so much, and there's so many movies that we see the rating systems. Horror in itself gets low ratings to begin with. Then you put found footage, they get even lower than that because it's not for everybody. But the community it's for, that's who it's for, and they will hype you up so much. I have seen movies that have been on a $5 budget. That I'm like, you know what? Clearly, there's a lot of flaws here, but I still enjoyed this movie. But back to you guys, because I do want to just get into some of this as well. What you can let us know, what's next for you guys? Because I really like this movie. I'm gonna check out Playhouse. Hopefully very soon. I'm writing it down. It's definitely going up on my list because I really enjoyed what you guys did. And what else can we expect from you?
So we've had a really interesting reception to Black Daruma, and we always knew people would either get it, love it, or hate it, and it would be that it would divide. We call it like a Marmite film. I don't know if you have that in the US, but it's a spread it's like a type of sandwich spread that gets a strong reaction. So we always call it a Marmite film. But some of the reviews we got and the influencers who've come to like it, like yourself, it was so inspiring. The energy that came back of how unsettled and how people really absorbed it and loved it, and that outweighed any of the negativity because it was like, hey, it's not going to be for everyone. You're going to accept that. It made us feel there's more to go with this, and so we now have another project which is called Red Daruma. We've been given a really interesting location to film in, and we will be bringing Ryan back, but he will be in quite a disturbing state. And
well, after that ending, I would expect so.
Yeah, some of the other actors will be coming back, and we just want to raise the bar on it and create even more tension. And what we can say is that at the moment, it looks like half of the film is going to be told through police interview tapes, and the other half's going to be revealing, what led up to those moments. And we've also got a Louis from Found TV who's going to work with us as an exec producer.
Oh, awesome!
Which is really great. So that's something we've been talking with him about doing, and therefore we're going to hopefully get more promotion around it, and all going well, we'd like to do maybe a few more colors as well.
Whole Rainbow Daruma sort of franchise.
I'm here for it. I am definitely here for that. Again, love this movie. I'm already excited for Red Daruma. So yeah, whatever you guys put out, just send me a message and I will look for it because I am already a fan of your work. I definitely want to see everything that you guys have come up with and come up with in the future. I do really appreciate you guys taking the time out to speak to me for Found Footage Fridays filmmaker interview. Is there anything else that you guys want to mention or talk about regarding this movie or anything else that you may be working on?
Yes, I mean, we're also looking at developing a course teaching kind of found footage style filmmaking, and we'd be really interested to know if people, certainly actors who want to make their own films, and people who are interested in filming might be interested in something like that, because we're in the process of creating that course, and that's something we want to move into as well, because I think a lot of people, they get this idea that they want to make a film, but it's too big a thing. But if you start small and you think, what have I got access to? My auntie's got a caravan or motorhome, or I've got an apartment I can use for free, and you can start creating something and doing it on the weekend. What a great thing that is. And so we want to be part of encouraging people to stop making short films that no one cares about, and do a full feature film, and do a found footage feature film, and you will just learn so much. And it's such a beautiful thing. So I think we're really excited about encouraging people with that, and would love to hear people's feedback on if they'd be interested in something like that.
Well, instant feedback. If that's an online course, sign me up. I would definitely be interested in that, because that is awesome. From established filmmakers already, it's great and especially for found footage, it is so cool to know that there are people that do want to share their experience and teach more people, because again, especially with the news of Found TV, the streaming app, found footage, we've always known it's been here. It's been here for longer than people thought it has, but it is now slowly growing again. And it's awesome that there's people who want to teach a new generation of people to do so.
Yeah. And I just want to say as well, I think this is great what you've got going here, and this has been a really fantastic interview. You're very good at this, and it's just been so relaxed and easy to talk about it. And obviously because you're so passionate, so interested in it, it just makes it very different, to just doing an interview that's just by the numbers, where you're just getting through it. And so I think this is really great, and I'm looking forward to watching more of the content you produce, and watching this whole thing, grow. And I just think there's such a good connection between, what you guys are doing and the filmmakers. And if we can come together, you want to talk to filmmakers, you want to know the insights of that, and the filmmakers need you guys to get people to know about the films. And I think the more we bring those connections together, I think we can really support this independent film industry that is often so difficult, because we're not working, we don't have studio budgets or all the rest. But I think outside of that, there's whole new ways to operate, and people are starting to figure that out. And long may it continue, and let's just see more great, interesting movies made.
No, and thank you so much for saying that, because definitely here on Voices from the Mausoleum, specifically Found Footage Fridays, it is very important to us. Our passion is behind independent found footage films, indie films in general, found footage. We love supporting these filmmakers, the screenwriters, the actors. We love being a part of this. We do thank you guys for always giving us your time, because these movies are very important to us for many different reasons. So we always want to give credit back to the people who have given us these amazing movies and amazing escapes from our own realities, even though sometimes they are parallel to our realities. But no, I just want to take the time out to say thank you guys for joining us. We do appreciate everything. Again, we can't wait to see what else you guys do. And lastly, can you let everyone know where they can find you, or what your socials are? And then you already mentioned your upcoming projects, but let us know where we can find you.
You can get us on Instagram. We're WattsBrothers _. We have a YouTube channel as well, which is Watts Brothers. You'll find us on there. We're on X as well, Watts Brothers. I guess if you just search for that, we have a link tree, which is Watts Brothers too, with some more of our links and stuff, you can engage with. So yeah, we're out there and just happy to hear from anybody if wants to send us a message, or Facebook, we're on that too, Watts Brothers. Yeah, go for it. We love hearing from people and engaging and getting people's reactions, even if people didn't like something that we've done. We love to to hear that and spar off with people to just engage the community.
Awesome. Well, one last time, thank you guys so much for joining us. We will have all of your links down in the captions below. Again, this is Found Footage Fridays. We were talking with the Watts brothers about their movie Black Daruma. We hope you guys have a great Friday. All links will be down below, and then we will catch you guys next week. Thank you.
Thank you.